In business and product development, some organizations gain momentum over time, growing faster with seemingly less effort, while others struggle despite working just as hard. This difference often comes down to understanding and implementing what systems thinkers call flywheel effects. Building on our exploration of systems thinking fundamentals, we'll examine one of its most potent applications, designing self-reinforcing cycles that gain momentum over time. These flywheel effects represent a practical way to apply systems thinking to create sustainable growth and competitive advantage. By the end of this module, you'll understand what makes a true flywheel, how to identify potential flywheels in your organization, and how to design systems that generate positive momentum. You'll also learn to recognize and eliminate friction points that may prevent your flywheels from gaining speed. Let's start by understanding what we mean by a flywheel effect. Both Peter Senge in The Fifth Discipline, published in 1990, and Jim Collins in his book Good to Great, published in 2001, discuss this powerful systems concept, though with slightly different emphases. A flywheel is a heavy rotating disc used in machines to maintain momentum and smooth out the delivery of power. Collins uses this mechanical analogy to describe how business success often comes not from a single breakthrough moment, but from consistent effort applied in a strategic direction over time. As he describes it, picture pushing a massive, heavy flywheel. It takes significant effort to get it moving at first, but with each push, it moves a bit faster. Eventually, the flywheel's own momentum begins to carry it forward, making it easier to generate even more speed. Each turn builds upon the work done before it. Now, it's important to understand that a flywheel isn't just any feedback loop or cycle. In business contexts, flywheels should have specific characteristics. First, they create self-reinforcing loops where each component strengthens the next. Second, they generate compounding effects over time, where results accelerate as momentum builds. Third, they build momentum that makes each subsequent effort more productive than the last. And finally, they reduce friction as they gain speed, making continued growth easier to achieve. I worked at a company once where the word flywheel was so overused it became our drinking game. People applied it to any process where work was passed between teams. That's not really a flywheel. A flywheel should have compound effects over time and momentum that builds, not just a routine exchange of work. Flywheels are powerful because they create compounding returns from your initial investments. Unlike linear growth models where output is directly proportional to input, flywheels can generate exponentially greater results as they gain momentum. They're particularly valuable in product development. Here are some examples to start your thinking. First, when properly designed, review flywheels can turn satisfied customers into acquisition channels through referrals, reviews, and word of mouth. Second, while marketing campaigns end and sales pushes conclude, a well-designed marketing flywheel continues generating results with decreasing effort over time. Third, they build competitive advantages that strengthen over time. As your flywheel gains momentum, it becomes increasingly difficult for competitors to catch up. Amazon's customer experience flywheel provides an instructive example of these principles in action. In the early 2000s, Amazon struggled to find its footing beyond books, and Jeff Bezos invited Jim Collins to speak at an Amazon executive retreat. Inspired by Collins's flywheel concept, Bezos and his team developed what became known as the virtuous cycle diagram, a simple sketch showing how lower prices would lead to more customer visits, which would attract more third-party sellers, increasing selection, which would enhance the customer experience and allow for even lower prices. This insight came at a crucial time for Amazon. Instead of pursuing disconnected initiatives, the company aligned all its efforts around this flywheel. They launched Amazon Marketplace for third-party sellers, developed Amazon Prime to enhance customer experience, and built AWS, initially to support their own infrastructure needs. Each of these moves strengthened their flywheel, creating a self-reinforcing cycle that helped transform Amazon from an online bookstore into one of the world's most valuable companies. Organizations with successful flywheels share common traits: customer centricity, ecosystem building, data leverage, continuous innovation, and platform thinking. These elements work together to create self-reinforcing cycles that drive sustained growth. So, how do you identify potential flywheels in your organization? Look for areas where success creates the conditions for more success, places where virtuous cycles could emerge. Common locations for flywheels in product organizations include user acquisition and retention cycles, product quality and customer satisfaction loops, and team capabilities and productivity cycles. Let me give you a concrete example. The collaborative whiteboard platform Miro launched a user template library that created a powerful flywheel effect. As users created and shared templates, search traffic increased because Google indexed those templates. People discovered Miro through these templates, signed up for the product, and made more templates. As the library grew, it attracted even more users, creating a beautiful, self-reinforcing cycle. Another example is a product quality flywheel. Positive reviews serve as trust indicators for potential customers if you have a high-quality product and a low-friction way for users to leave reviews. These reviews drive more purchases, which generate more positive reviews. This cycle can significantly reduce customer acquisition costs over time. You can even create flywheels within your own team's processes. I experienced this firsthand early in my management career. There was another manager who thought he could balance his team by deliberately assigning work to people who weren't skilled in those areas. He believed they would learn through experience, but he wasn't providing coaching or mentorship, just throwing them into the deep end. Meanwhile, I took a strengths-based approach, aligning work with people's natural abilities and interests. The results spoke for themselves. Within a year, my team outperformed every other department, and we began winning company-wide recognition. As team members excelled in their areas of strength, they discovered ways to automate processes and scale our solutions, which created a virtuous cycle of increasing productivity and innovation. The key is identifying the driving force and ensuring each component reinforces the next. Once you've identified potential flywheel opportunities, how do you design them to be effective? Start by mapping the entire system, the relationships between components, the flow of value, and potential feedback loops. A well-designed flywheel has several core components. First, it must have a clear driving force at its center. For Amazon, this is customer experience. For Google, it's the quality of search results. For Apple, it's the integration of hardware and software. Second, ensure that each flywheel component reinforces the next in a clear, logical sequence. No leaks should exist where value or momentum is lost between stages. Third, make connections explicit and measurable to track performance and identify friction points. Without measurement, you can't know if your flywheel is gaining momentum. Fourth, balance simplicity with comprehensiveness. Your flywheel should be simple enough to explain and understand, yet comprehensive enough to capture the key dynamics of your business. Let's look at Duolingo as an example of effective flywheel design. When they started, they faced a challenge, creating a free language learning app while building a sustainable business. Their solution was ingenious. Duolingo designed a flywheel where users learning a language also contribute to translations, which the company could then sell as a service to their customers. As more users joined, translation quality improved, generating revenue that funded product improvements, which attracted even more users. They gamified the learning experience to increase engagement and added social features encouraging users to invite friends. This flywheel design has been remarkably effective. By 2023, Duolingo had grown to over 500 million users and successfully monetized through premium subscriptions and ads while keeping the core service free. The company's design principle of "make it fun" ensured users stayed engaged, which kept the flywheel spinning. The key insight from Duolingo's experience is that even a free product can drive a powerful flywheel if designed thoughtfully. By identifying how each component strengthens the next, user growth to better translations, to more revenue, to product improvements, to more user growth, they created a self-reinforcing cycle that continues to drive their success. Remember that a simple, well-executed flywheel is far more effective than a complex one that never gains momentum. This connects directly to the principles of Kaizen and continuous improvement we discussed in our previous module. Start with a basic model, measure its performance, and refine it over time. Once you've designed a flywheel with these essential components, you'll likely notice that getting it started is hard. Like a physical flywheel that requires significant initial force, your business flywheel needs focused energy to overcome inertia. Let's explore how to nurture and accelerate your flywheel once you've designed it, pushing it past that initial resistance to the point where momentum begins to build. This is where the principles of Kaizen and continuous improvement become particularly valuable. Instead of attempting massive changes, focus on identifying and eliminating small friction points throughout your system. Anything that slows down or disrupts your flywheel's momentum. These could be unnecessary steps in a user journey, handoffs between teams, or points where value gets stuck. You can methodically reduce friction and increase momentum by consistently applying the Deming cycle of plan, do, check, act to your flywheel. Amazon provides an excellent example of this approach in practice. Understanding that customer service contacts typically represent friction in the customer experience, they systematically analyzed why customers contacted them. Rather than hiring more support staff to handle these contacts, they built solutions directly into their websites and apps to address these issues proactively. For instance, when they noticed customers frequently contacted them about order status, they created prominent order tracking features. When people asked about returns, they developed an automated returns process. This systematic friction reduction has allowed Amazon to reduce its contacts per order metric to 1/10 of most competitors' levels, creating a significant competitive advantage while simultaneously improving customer satisfaction. This approach exemplifies W. Edwards Deming's principle that we should cease dependence on inspection to achieve quality, and instead build quality into the product in the first place. By addressing the root causes of friction rather than treating symptoms, Amazon strengthened its flywheel while reducing operational costs. Reducing friction is essential, but you also need to know where to focus your efforts, which requires thoughtful measurement at each stage of your flywheel. Start by identifying key metrics that indicate momentum at each point in your cycle. For customer-centric flywheels, this might include satisfaction scores, net promoter scores, and referral rates. For growth flywheels, you might track new user acquisition costs, conversion rates, and repeat purchase rates. Don't try to measure everything at once. This can create analysis paralysis and slow your progress. Begin with just a few critical indicators directly related to your flywheel's core components. As your understanding deepens, you can refine your measurement approach. Establishing regular review cycles to assess your flywheel's performance is essential. These reviews should be focused not just on what the metrics show, but on identifying specific actions to reduce friction and increase momentum. Make these reviews collaborative, involving team members who can provide different perspectives on potential improvements. Remember that nurturing a flywheel is a long-term commitment. Unlike short-term initiatives that may show quick results but fade quickly, flywheels take time to build momentum. The initial stages often require significant effort with limited visible results. Unfortunately, many organizations lose patience and abandon potential flywheels before they have a chance to gain momentum. You can counter this by focusing on long-term potential while celebrating small wins along the way. Each friction point removed and each improvement in your metrics represents progress toward a self-reinforcing system that will ultimately deliver compounding returns. As you work to build and nurture your flywheel's momentum, it's important to recognize that this journey isn't always straightforward. Even well-designed flywheels can stall or fail to gain traction. Let's examine some common pitfalls that organizations encounter when implementing flywheel strategies, and how to avoid them to keep your momentum building in the right direction. One I mentioned earlier is mistaking any cycle for a flywheel. Not every process that forms a loop qualifies as a flywheel. For example, a Scrum sprint is cyclical. You plan, execute, review, and repeat. but it doesn't inherently create compounding effects or build momentum. It's simply a routine. True flywheels must have a mechanism for compounding returns, where each cycle produces more value than the last. Think of Spotify's recommendation engine. As more people listen to music, the algorithm gets smarter, leading to better recommendations, which increases listening time and further improves the algorithm. That's a flywheel because the value compounds with each cycle. Another common pitfall is creating overly complex designs that never gain momentum. I've seen organizations map elaborate flywheels with dozens of components and connections, only to find that they can't effectively implement or measure them. Complex systems are harder to explain, harder to align teams around, and harder to troubleshoot when they don't work as expected. As Leonardo da Vinci supposedly said, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. When designing flywheels, aim for the minimum viable system that generates self-reinforcing effects. You can always add complexity later as your understanding deepens and your initial flywheel gains momentum. Failing to secure organization-wide support can also derail flywheel initiatives. Because flywheels often cross traditional departmental boundaries, they require alignment across different teams and functions. If marketing is focused on acquisition metrics while product is optimizing for engagement, your potential flywheel may never gain momentum. Building this alignment takes time and patience. You'll need to help others understand the system's thinking perspective and how their role contributes to the larger flywheel. Use simple visualizations, concrete examples, and regular communication to build shared understanding. Similarly, without full organization-wide support, it's common for people to lose patience before momentum builds. One of the most frustrating things I see is executives demanding results from flywheel initiatives after just 2 to 4 days. This reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of how flywheels work. Remember Collins's description of pushing a heavy flywheel? The initial turns require significant effort with little visible result. It's only after consistent pushing that momentum begins to build. This reality challenges our culture of quarterly targets and quick wins, but it's essential to understand if you want to build sustainable growth mechanisms. Set appropriate expectations from the beginning. Explain that flywheel initiatives may not show dramatic results in their early stages, but have the potential for exponential returns over time. Define clear milestone metrics to track progress during this initial phase, and celebrate small indicators of momentum even before the big results appear. Finally, over-optimizing one component at the expense of the whole cycle can prevent your flywheel from working effectively. This happens when teams focus narrowly on their specific metrics without understanding how they affect the broader system. For instance, a marketing team might reduce customer acquisition costs by targeting prospects who are quick to convert, only to find that these customers have poor retention rates because they aren't ideal fits for the product's value proposition, ultimately breaking the flywheel. Or a product team might focus so heavily on adding new features that they neglect the performance and reliability that drive customer satisfaction. Now that we've explored common pitfalls, you might be wondering, how do we know if our flywheel is actually working? This brings us to one of the most crucial aspects of successful flywheel implementation: measurement. Without proper metrics and analysis, it's impossible to determine whether your flywheel is gaining momentum or merely spinning in place. Let's examine how effective organizations measure their flywheel momentum to ensure they're on the right track. Start by defining specific metrics for each stage of your flywheel. These metrics should directly relate to the core function of each component and its relationship to the next stage. For a content marketing flywheel, for example, you might track content quality, like time on page, scroll depth, and sharing rates. Audience growth, measured by new visitors, newsletter subscribers, and follower counts. Engagement, by looking at comments, shares, and return visits. Conversion, such as lead generation, trial signups, and purchases. And advocacy, denoted by referrals, reviews, and testimonials. These metrics form a chain that helps you understand how effectively value is flowing through your system. By tracking them consistently over time, you can identify where momentum is building or stalling. Visualizing flywheel progress is equally important. Create dashboards that display key metrics in a way that makes trends and relationships clear. Line graphs showing progression over time can reveal whether your flywheel is accelerating, maintaining steady momentum, or losing speed. Heat maps can highlight particularly strong or weak connections between components. Beyond the specific metrics for each component, look for these higher level indicators that your flywheel is gaining momentum. Decreasing customer acquisition cost. As your flywheel gains momentum, the cost of acquiring new customers decreases over time, even as the total number of customers grows. Increasing referral rates. A strong flywheel turns customers into advocates. Rising referral rates indicate that your flywheel is successfully generating word of mouth momentum. Improving conversion rates. As trust signals and social proof accumulate, prospects should convert at higher rates than they did previously. Rising customer lifetime value, or LTV. Customers who enter through a well-functioning flywheel often have higher retention rates and lifetime value than those acquired through other channels. And acceleration in key metrics. Perhaps most importantly, look for acceleration in your key metrics, not just growth, but growth that increases its pace over time. This acceleration is the clearest sign that your flywheel is working as designed. Remember that flywheels typically take time to show clear results. In the early stages, focus on leading indicators that suggest momentum is building, even if the big outcomes haven't materialized yet. For example, increases in customer satisfaction often precede increases in referrals and word of mouth acquisition. Regular review sessions are crucial for interpreting these metrics effectively. Gather key stakeholders quarterly to analyze flywheel performance, identify friction points, and plan specific improvements. These sessions should focus on what the numbers show and on developing concrete actions to accelerate your flywheel's momentum. We've covered a lot of ground in this module, from understanding what flywheel effects are to designing, nurturing, and measuring them in your organization. Flywheels represent one of the most powerful applications of systems thinking. By creating self-reinforcing cycles where success builds upon success, you can generate sustained growth and competitive advantage with decreasing effort over time. Here are some key takeaways from this module. True flywheels have self-reinforcing loops, compounding effects, building momentum, and reduced friction over time. Not just any cyclical process qualifies. Identifying potential flywheels means looking for areas where success creates conditions for more success, such as user acquisition, product quality, or team capability cycles. Designing effective flywheels requires a clear driving force, reinforcing components, measurable connections, and balanced complexity, as organizations like Amazon, Duolingo, and Miro demonstrate. Nurturing flywheels involves systematically reducing friction through continuous improvement, measuring progress at each stage, and maintaining patience as momentum builds. Avoiding common pitfalls like mistaking cycles for flywheels, creating overly complex designs, failing to secure organization-wide support, and losing patience before momentum builds. Measuring flywheel momentum requires tracking specific metrics for each component, looking for acceleration in results, and regularly reviewing performance to identify improvements. As you return to your work, look for potential flywheel opportunities in your product development process. What virtuous cycles could you create or strengthen? Where might you reduce friction to help existing flywheels gain speed? Building effective flywheels takes time and consistent effort, but the compounding returns make it one of the most valuable investments you can make in your organization's future success. By applying systems thinking to create self-reinforcing cycles, you can build momentum that carries your organization forward with increasing force and decreasing resistance.